Good evening and welcome to Gravitas. I'm Palki Sharma, Upadhyay. Let's get started.
An invasion of Ukraine is very likely, and it could be imminent.
The situation is difficult, but it's not critical.
Engage in diplomacy with Russia.
It was supposed to be the day of the Russian invasion into Ukraine. It was just another Wednesday for Ukrainians. All the doomsday predictions fueled by statements from the White House in London came to naught. Russia says it is pulling back some troops from Crimea because the drills are over. I met the Ukrainian ambassador to India earlier today. He said a war is not imminent, that the situation is difficult but not critical, and that those trying to sensationalize it should apologize. We'll bring you excerpts of the conversation, plus updates from Kiev. Is there a de-escalation? Ukraine's Western allies remain unconvinced. Either way, the crisis is not over. Russia is said to have launched a cyber attack on Ukraine. Its drills and deployments in most locations on the border are still on. But markets saw some cheer today on the hope that a war may have been averted. On Gravitas tonight, we'll bring you the latest on the biggest military conflict in Europe since the Second World War. Also on the show tonight, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau heckled in Parliament as he tries to declare an emergency in Canada. We bring you the update. In Pakistan, the Prime Minister may be facing an exit from office. His allies are meeting opposition leaders, pushing for a no-confidence motion. Have you heard of Roblox? Children across the world are hooked on to this gaming platform. Turns out it has sexually explicit games. And news of a medical breakthrough, a woman cured of HIV after stem cell transplant. We'll bring you a special report. We begin as always with Gravitas Global Headlines.
In a landmark deal, families of the victims of the Sandy Hook school shooting have reached a $73 million settlement with U.S. gunmaker Remington, marking the first time a gunmaker has been held liable for a mass shooting in the U.S. The junta chief Sandaogo Damiba has been inaugurated as president of Burkina Faso, barely 3 weeks after he led a coup to topple the elected head of state, Roch Marc Christian Kabore. The Honduran police arrested ex-president Juan Orlando Hernandez following a U.S. extradition request for alleged ties with drug traffickers. Prince Andrew and Virginia Giuffre have reached a settlement in the sex abuse suit against him, while the financial terms of the out-of-court settlement have not been disclosed. Jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny faces a new trial over fresh fraud charges that could see his jail time extended by more than a decade. Anti-COVID mandate protests in New Zealand enter the 9th day as demonstrators continue to block streets in Wellington. The group is calling for an end to all COVID-19 restrictions. Legendary Indian music composer and singer Bappi Lahiri, who popularized disco music in India, has passed away at the age of 69. 23 people have died due to flash floods and landslides in Brazil's Rio district after heavy rainfall in the region. A state of disaster has been declared and rescue operations are still underway to assist those stranded. Paris Saint-Germain have drawn first blood against Real Madrid in the blockbuster round of 16 Champions League tie. Lionel Messi missed a penalty in Paris, but Kylian Mbappe scored a late winner against the club, which he could move to this summer. In the other clash of the night, Premier League champions Manchester City thrashed Sporting Lisbon 5-0 in Portugal. Clément Noël claimed France's first alpine skiing gold medal of the Beijing Olympics as he won the men's slalom title. Noël was sixth fastest after the first run, but then laid down the quickest second run to clock a combined total of 1 minute 44.09 seconds, just 0.06 of a second quicker than Australian Johannes Strolz.
Our cover story tonight remains the crisis in Ukraine. Russia's invasion of Ukraine was supposed to happen today. It did not. There were some cyber attacks on Ukrainian government websites and banks, but no military attack. Instead, Russia says it is pulling back some troops. What do these mixed signals mean? Is this de-escalation or the beginning of de-escalation? Will Russia pull back all its troops, or will it launch a limited incursion? What about the Indian students who are in Ukraine? Should they come back? Earlier today, I put these questions to Dr. Igor Polika. He is Ukraine's ambassador to India. He said war is not imminent. The situation is difficult but not critical, and a diplomatic solution could be in sight. He even had a message for our viewers in India and Ukraine in Hindi. Here's an excerpt from that conversation. Ambassador Igor Polika, welcome to WION, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Today was supposed to be the day of the invasion, quote unquote, or war, according to the predictions by some of Ukraine's allies and some statements by your own president. Last we checked, it hasn't happened. Do you still fear it might?
First of all, Palki, I can congratulate you. You were the pioneer among Indian journalists to visit Ukraine. I saw some of your stories about situation in Ukraine. I highly appreciate your professional level.
Thank you, sir.
You met people from various strata of society. And that's why I congratulate you on being highly qualified and professional pioneer in the Ukrainian direction. Coming back to the issue you raised. Of course, 16th was announced as the date of invasion. You see, starting from after 2014, I can remember 10, 15, maybe 20 exact dates of invasion, which never happened. We are happy that we survived 21st attempt of invasion. But talking seriously, again, there are too many questions to the professionalism of many journalists. Many people are just looking for cheap sensations. For some people, this 16th of February, it became some kind of tamasha. Mukabla. Who will predict the exact date? According to one tabloid, invasion should have started today at 1 a.m. According to the second tabloid, it should have started at 3 a.m. Of course, nothing happened.
But your own president was one of those who gave 16th of February as the possible date of invasion.
Our president never confirmed any exact date of invasion. Our president repeatedly claimed that Ukraine is closely monitoring the situation. And his main postulate was that Ukraine is not expecting and don't see any imminent danger of invasion. Well, today, 16 has not materialized. Decent journalists, after such information, at least should publish that I am sorry, maaf kijiye. It was a deep mistake. These people, some journalists, they are making sensation. No excuse, no maaf kijiye. 16 didn't materialize. Now they are discussing some new dates. Immediately they are getting new dates. That's why my request is to many journalists. Stop playing tamasha with the dates. Situation is difficult, but it's not critical.
And I will not try to defend anyone in the press who sensationalizes something as serious as this. But would you also say the same for your allies in the West? Because we've heard people from the government, both in the US and the UK, say and use words like, an invasion is imminent, I'm quoting. An attack may happen in the next 48 hours. US intelligence assessments saying that there might be 50,000 civilian casualties in Ukraine. That did lead to a lot of panic and worry. So while you blame the journalists, and sometimes rightly so, would you also say the same for your Western allies who have ratcheted up this tension?
You see, in this case, I am not dividing Asian, European, or other journalists.
Okay,
I
allies.
am
Allies.
Yes, even allies journalists. I am asking all the journalists.
I'm not talking about journalists, sir. I'm talking about the governments.
I am asking all the journalists to be more careful and more cautious with all these headlines, with all these panicky moods.
Absolutely appreciate it, sir. But I'm asking you not about journalists. I'm asking you about the Foreign Office in the UK, about the White House spokesperson in the United States saying these exact same things. The journalists make headlines from what their governments are telling, and their governments are saying, quote unquote, an invasion is imminent. It may happen in the next 48 hours. 50,000 civilians may be killed.
You see, I am, thanks God, ambassador to India. Of course, I don't like to comment the statements of some our allies, of some our Western partners. I can comment only I am responsible, first of all, for India. I highly appreciate Indian balanced position. For example, in this travel advisory, your embassy is working in normal regime. People, Indian citizens in Ukraine may consider possibility of temporarily leaving Ukraine. In this case, as ambassador to India, I can only appreciate the Indian position.
All right, so we'll talk about Indians, and we have thousands of Indian students, and
Yes.
We did speak to some of them, and now this advisory has come. So I want you to send out a message to the parents of all the students who are studying in Ukraine, maybe in Hindi if you want to, and tell them what the situation is like and whether they should worry about their children.
It's not so critical and panicky as some people are trying to make. I can repeat once again, situation is strenuous, but it's not critical. I understand the worries of some parents. They are asking the government, please bring our children back, and so on and so on. I don't see any danger of the imminent war. It's the right of the Indian government, and it's the right of Indian citizens to decide whether to come back for some time to India. Moreover, the weather is very fine now. Or whether to stay in Ukraine. It's your choice.
I want you to, I know you speak very good Hindi, and I want you to say something to our audience in Hindi.
Tak, Palki ji, आपके आने के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. अब तो मेरे ख्याल में highly professional पत्रकार, और आपको धन्यवाद यूक्रेन के बारे में, इस रिपोर्ट यूक्रेन के बारे में जिसने आपने किया.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, and thank you for speaking with us. Now, it was the biggest anticlimax. All the warnings, all the doomsday predictions, in the end, nothing happened. It was just another Wednesday in Ukraine, enemy at the gates, but no closer to war. So what exactly happened? America was confident. Their media said Putin would invade today, that 50,000 people would die. If you ask the Russians, the opposite is happening. Russian troops are returning to their barracks. So did US intel fail like it did in Iraq and Afghanistan, or was all of this panic fake? Ukraine kept rejecting America's dire predictions. When US media said Wednesday was the day of invasion, Ukraine turned the narrative around and said that Wednesday would be the day of unity for them. A gigantic 200-meter-long Ukrainian flag was unfurled. President Volodymyr Zelensky tried to boost morale with this message.
We are all united by a wish to live in peace, to live a happy life with our families, parents and children. We have the full right to all of this because we are at home here in Ukraine. Nobody will love our home as much as we do, and nobody can defend our home as we can. I wish you a happy Unity Day, my blue yellow ones, a happy day of unity of Ukraine, in the east and west, in the south and north.
I have to say it's an excellent piece of propaganda. Turn your doomsday into a celebration. Does this mean the Russian threat is gone? Well, not yet. On Tuesday, Ukraine was targeted in a cyber attack. Their armed forces and defense ministry websites were hacked. So were 2 Ukrainian banks. In total, around 10 websites were inaccessible. Who hacked them? The obvious candidate is Russia. Ukraine is accusing them of quote-unquote little dirty tricks. The Kremlin, of course, has denied the allegation. Now, cyber attacks, we know, are a Russian speciality. Plus, it was one of Putin's unconventional options to attack Ukraine. But this hacking was not large enough. A couple of teenagers in a dormitory could have done this. So if Putin is indeed going the cyber way, chances are there will be more hackings, more substantial hackings. What about the conventional war? On that, Russia is sending mixed signals, mixed messages. Vladimir Putin says he does not want confrontation. He is ready to begin negotiations with the West.
Do we want war or not? Of course not. That is why we have offered our proposals to start the negotiation process, which should lead to an agreement of providing equal security for everybody, including our country.
Do his actions, in fact, match his words? Well, both yes and no. Some Russian troops are returning to their barracks. Take this video, for instance. It shows Russian tanks and equipment leaving Crimea. We have another one. Tanks being loaded onto railway carriages. Looking at these pictures, it seems that Vladimir Putin is right. Maybe he does not want a fight after all. But remember, this is wartime. As they say, truth is the first casualty of war. Both sides are pushing propaganda. Both sides are building narratives. So you cannot take these pictures at face value. I'll give you 2 reasons why. A, these were all published by the Russian Defense Ministry. We cannot verify them independently. And B, the escalation has not stopped everywhere. Russian fighter jets are still practicing maneuvers in Belarus. Russian warships are still holding drills in the Black Sea. And Belarus is firing nuclear-capable ballistic missiles. So the threat is very much alive. Putin may be pulling back some troops, but he's still keeping Ukraine guessing. And this propaganda game has Joe Biden in a bind. His intel reports are all over the place. First, the US said Putin would attack on Wednesday. Then they said an attack was imminent. Now Biden says an invasion is, quote-unquote, distinctly possible.
Analysts indicate that they remain very much in a threatening position. And the fact remains, right now, Russia has more than 150,000 troops encircling Ukraine and Belarus and along Ukraine's border. An invasion remains distinctly possible.
How the mighty fall. The CIA once toppled regimes for fun. Their spies tricked world leaders and warlords. Today they stand exposed. As it turned out, American intelligence was wrong. Russia did not invade on Wednesday. In fact, their posture is changing. At least some of Russia's soldiers are returning home. Does the West admit its mistake now? Well, not at all. In fact, they're sticking to their guns. The NATO chief says he has seen no de-escalation on the ground.
I heard the signs from Moscow about readiness to continue diplomatic efforts. But so far, we have not seen any de-escalation on the ground. On the contrary, it appears that Russia continues the military build-up.
This is a crucial point for Ukraine. Putin seems to have ruled out war. Instead, he's turning his focus to a face-saving strategy, and that strategy is Donbass. He's got a couple of options. Option number one, recognize 2 breakaway republics in eastern Ukraine. Russian lawmakers are already asking him to do this. And on Tuesday, he dropped a hint. Putin called the situation in Donbass a genocide.
The liberty to say that according to our estimates, what is happening in Donbass is now genocide.
When Europe talks about genocide, it is a serious matter. They've seen Nazi concentration camps, Stalinist gulags. Does Donbass fit such a description? Most experts agree it does not. Having said that, it reveals Putin's thought process. There will be popular support for recognizing the 2 republics. But it will also end the peace talks. The Minsk Accord would be dead. Option number 2 for Putin, fight a proxy war through the insurgents. Moscow is already doing this. All Putin has to do is turn up the scale. Give them more weapons, training and funds. Again, this would bleed Ukraine. At the same time, there would be no full-scale war. What Vladimir Putin decides could shape Europe's future. NATO is desperate to end the standoff. Joe Biden is promising to never place missiles in Ukraine, even if it joins the NATO. Now is the time for Putin to be pragmatic. Last time around, his demands made no sense. A veto on Ukraine joining the NATO and no NATO presence in Eastern Europe. That's what Putin was asking for, and those demands were designed to be rejected. This time, though, he must be more practical. Propose something both sides can agree on. As for NATO, they must give up their expansionism. They must stop recruiting Russia's neighbors. Just think about it. Why is Ukraine eager to join the NATO? Because it fears Russia, because it wants NATO protection. If the Russian threat disappeared permanently, would Ukraine still want to join the NATO? We're talking about defense commitments here. Big military spending. Does Kiev really want all of this? This may or may not be the first sign of de-escalation, but we can say one thing for sure. The door to diplomacy is not ajar anymore. It is opening wide. The key is to remember that this is not Russia versus America. This is Russia versus Ukraine. Any diplomatic agreement must include Kiev. If not, we'll be back to square one next winter. So even Putin is realizing the significance of talks. Guess who isn't? Canada's Justin Trudeau. He's preparing for an all-out offensive against the protesters. On Tuesday, he acquired his greatest weapon, the emergency powers. This means Trudeau can ban protests. He can take over private resources. He can stop people from traveling. Basically, he can crush the freedom convoy, end the blockades by force. But Canada's opposition has a worrying question. What if the extreme measures make things worse?
The Prime Minister thinks that now is the time to use this extreme measure and invoke the Emergencies Act. Isn't it true that the Prime Minister's actions could serve to actually make things worse and not make things better?
It's a fair point, a fair question. A crackdown may have worked last month. Back then, the Freedom Convoy was just settling in. Well, now they have set up shop. Rifles and machetes have been found on protesters. So Trudeau's move could well backfire. Does he have a contingency plan? The Prime Minister was about to address that in Parliament when this happened.
Mr. Speaker, this is about keeping Canadians safe, protecting their communities and neighbourhoods, and ensuring jobs and our economy.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to interrupt the Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'm trying to hear the answer, and I'm having a very difficult time. There's some shouting going on.
This is a time for responsible leadership, not crass partisanship. The situation requires additional tools not held by other federal, provincial, or territorial law. It's what responsible leadership requires.
Responsible leadership, he says. This was bound to happen. Declaring an emergency is a very big deal, you see. You're acquiring sweeping powers. You're suspending democracy. Does the situation in Canada warrant such harsh measures? In some places, yes. Near the border, things are escalating fast. The blockade is affecting bilateral trade. Many trucks are unable to cross over into the U.S., and this delay could mean massive losses. The U.S. and Canada trade goods worth $511 billion. That's around $1.4 billion per day. And out of this, 323 million is transported through one route. It's called the Ambassador Bridge, the same bridge that was blocked for days by the Freedom Convoy. So the economic cost is real. Plus, on Monday, there was worrying news. Guns, ammunition and body armors were found on protesters. You see, Canada's gun laws are strict, but America's are not. If weapons start flowing in from America's border states, things could get out of hand. So in these parts, an emergency may work. But what about in the cities? There, the character of protests is different. Let me show you some pictures from Ottawa. The protesters are largely peaceful. They're bringing giant teddy bears with them. I know it looks fun and harmless, but as we keep saying, these people, these protesters are anti-vaxxers, and they're putting others at risk. They may not be violent, but their demand is unacceptable. Now, Justin Trudeau says the emergency will not apply everywhere. It will be time and geography bound. But we know how these things play out. There is violence. There are trigger-happy police officers. It happens all over the world. And Canada cannot be an exception. So how Trudeau's emergency plays out will have to be seen. But that's not the only question. What about accountability? Who will answer for the days of blockade and violence at the border? For all the picketing? For all the obstructions to daily life? First in the line of fire was Ottawa's police chief, Peter Slawley. He resigned on Tuesday, and frankly, it was not surprising. Since January, Ottawa was not under his control. It was under the Freedom Convoy's control. Some truckers harassed the residents. They raided food banks. They intimidated people on the streets. What was the police doing when all of this happened? Missing in action, and you cannot really blame them. Their Prime Minister himself fled his residence. So what can you expect the police to do? The fact is, Trudeau himself must take responsibility. First, he mocked the anti-vaxxers. Then he let the Freedom Convoy grow. And now he's planning a full-blown crackdown. The emergency may end the protests. But Canada still has a choice to make. Do they want to stick with this indecisive and clueless Prime Minister? And Justin Trudeau is not the only world leader in trouble right now. Nearly 6,000 miles away in Pakistan, another leader is struggling. Imran Khan Niazi, the Prime Minister of Pakistan. 2022 is turning into a nightmare for him. First he was losing sleep, now he's losing allies. They're breaking bread with opposition leaders, conspiring to pull him off the chair. This includes his former confidant, Jahangir Khan Tareen. He's one of the wealthiest politicians in Pakistan, also known as Mr. Moneybags. Of late, he's grown disgruntled with Imran Khan's leadership, all thanks to an ongoing corruption case against him. But he still enjoys considerable clout within the party, the Tehreek-e-Insaf. On Tuesday, a PTI faction led by Jahangir Khan Tareen met with leaders of the Pakistan Democratic Movement. This is basically an umbrella alliance, an umbrella movement of opposition parties in Pakistan. What do you think this meeting was about? Initiating a no-confidence motion against Imran Khan. The opposition is apparently trying to get Tareen's support for this. Also of other PTI allies, like the Chaudhry brothers, the leaders of PMLQ, that's Pakistan Muslim League Quaid-e-Azam group. Now, this party is also an ally of Imran Khan. Last week, they had a meeting. The Chaudhry brothers met Asif Ali Zardari. Zardari, you would know, is an opposition leader. He is the co-chairman of the Pakistan People's Party, PPP. The meeting was to discuss a no confidence vote. And a week before that, the opposition met with leaders of MQMP, the Muttahida Qawmi Movement Pakistan. yet another ally of Imran Khan, estranged ally. And this meeting too was about the no confidence vote. So you see the trend. A game of political musical chairs is underway in Pakistan. The opposition is trying to dislodge the government. They're wooing disgruntled coalition partners. Will they succeed? Let's look at what the numbers have to say. There are 342 seats in Pakistan's National Assembly. Imran Khan's party, the ruling party, along with the allies, have 177 seats in all. The opposition controls 162 seats. To remove Imran Khan from power, the opposition needs the support of 172 members. That's the magic figure, 172. That's what they need for a no-confidence vote to succeed. The opposition is just 10 seats short of that. And considering its recent hobnobbing with PTI allies, it may just achieve that mark, 172. It's not a question of if, but when. The opposition seems very confident this time. It says it will succeed in sending the PTI government packing. Look at this statement from Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, the chairman of Pakistan People's Party. He says, and I'm quoting, "It is a victory for democracy that most opposition parties now agree to bring a no-confidence motion against the government. The Prime Minister has lost the confidence of the people. It is about time he lost the confidence of Parliament." Then we have Maryam Aurangzeb, the Information Secretary of PMLN. That's Nawaz Sharif's party. And this is what she says. I'm quoting again. "The situation for tabling a no-confidence motion against Prime Minister Imran Khan is now favourable. The nation would soon hear good news." What explains this confidence? Well, there could be only one thing: the support of the Pakistan army. The air in Islamabad is rife with rumours that the Pakistan army is planning to dump its once blue-eyed boy. We've been reporting on this for weeks now, on how Imran Khan's relationship with the Pakistan army is going south, how it has distanced itself from the Pakistan Prime Minister. You may recall this case. He tried to retain his loyalist as the chief of the ISI, Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid. The army considered him an institutional liability, a threat to their political arrangement. They tried replacing him. Imran Khan went against them, went against the army, and now he's paying the price for doing so. Gul Bukhari, a renowned Pakistani columnist, says that the no-confidence move is General Bajwa's game, that he is the one pulling the strings. Syed Talat Hussain, another leading Pakistani journalist, described Bajwa's political engineering quite interestingly. He said, "Whom the gods would destroy, they first make them prime minister and then put them on TV." It's a rip-off of the Greek quote, "Those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad." And there couldn't be a more apt description of Imran Khan's state of mind right now. A few days back, when news of a no-confidence vote first began circulating, Imran Khan went on a rant on national television. He issued a warning to the opposition. If he is removed from power, he'll become dangerous. That's what he said. He'll be dangerous, and he will leave no place for opposition leaders to hide. Listen to this.
एक खबरदार करना चाहता हूं, अगर मैं गवर्नमेंट से बाहर निकल गया, मैं आपके लिए ज्यादा खतरनाक हूं। अभी तक तो मैं चुप करके या ऑफिस में बैठा होता हूं और तमाशे देख रहा होता हूं। मैं अगर सड़कों पे निकला आया ना, तो आपके लिए छुपने की जगह।
He's the Prime Minister threatening the people of his own country. The tone betrays his frustration and weakness. Imran Khan has sensed the doom that hangs over his regime. He knows his days are numbered. So by issuing such threats, he's trying to tell his enemies that he will not go without a fight. We'll be tracking his moves very closely. Now let's tell you about the latest medical breakthrough, the cure for a disease that has claimed more than 36 million lives the world over. I'm talking about HIV. A 64-year-old patient in the United States has become the first woman and the third person to be cured of this virus. She was treated in 2017, and 4 years on, she's showing no signs of the virus resurging. Our next report tells you more.
HIV, the human immunodeficiency virus, is by far the most sobering public health challenge this world has ever faced. Since it first emerged in the 1980s, it has claimed at least 36.3 million lives globally. It has also brought an isolating stigma upon those infected, simply because this virus has no cure. But there's finally some reason to be hopeful. In the United States, a 64-year-old patient has become the first woman and the third person to date to be cured of HIV, a breakthrough that could open several doors. The case was part of a US-backed study led by Dr. Yvonne Bryson from the University of California and Dr. Deborah Persad from the Johns Hopkins University. The scientists are calling her the New York patient. And here's how she was cured. In a procedure called haplocord transplant, the patient was first given cord blood from a partially matched donor to cure her cancer. A close relative also provided her with blood to boost her immune system as she underwent the transplant. After this, the patient was given additional stem cells, which have a unique ability to develop into special cell types which fight HIV.
Well, we're very excited to share our patient's story. It's particularly notable because she's the first woman who's achieved a long-term remission of HIV, and it's particularly important because worldwide women constitute over half of people living with HIV, and in the United States it's about a quarter.
The operation took place in 2017. The patient has been in remission for leukemia since then. By the end of 2020, her HIV treatment was also discontinued. 14 months on, the patient is yet to experience any signs of the virus resurging. She has been cured, the third person to be cured till date. The first was a Caucasian male known as the Berlin patient. His real name is Timothy Ray Brown. He experienced HIV remission for 12 years and was deemed completely cured.
Despite what you may have heard and have read and heard recently in the media, I am cured of the AIDS virus. Thank you. Thank you.
But in September 2020, Timothy died of leukemia. The second patient is a Latino male called the London patient. He has been in HIV remission for more than 30 months. Taken together, these cases indicate that there's an element of success in curing this virus. But sustaining the cure and making it available to more people still remains a challenge. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.